I'm in my late 20s and I have a really successful career. I make plenty of money, I own my own house, and I have 2 cars. But I've always failed in relationships. I had a long-term relationship in my early 20s, but I broke up with him because he just wasn't pulling his weight. I paid for our extravagant lifestyle. He would basically help me with my work and then expect me to pay him. Also, I paid the rent, I paid for the cars, and I paid for every single dinner date we ever had. We also had a joint bank account, which was a huge mistake on my part, because ultimately I was the one earning all the money. After 4 years of dating, I decided to break up with him and I told him to move out of my house. I felt free and I started dating right away. I met this guy one night and he was amazing. He complimented me all the time and made me feel really good about myself. But here's the problem, I tend to fall in love really easily. After that night, that guy and I would talk every single day. He would come over to my place and we would have dinner, but the good thing about this guy was that he had his own money and he was pretty wealthy. His family was also really well off. I totally saw myself marrying this guy, but then eventually we broke up. I found out that he was cheating on me, but also he was doing some illegal stuff in the background. I decided to forgive him for the cheating and everything, but he still wanted to break up. I mean, I was totally shocked because I was forgiving him, but he had no intention of being in a committed relationship with me. So once again, I was single. I decided not to focus on guys at all. Instead, I started going out with my friends and focusing on my career. But you know how it goes. When you're not looking for love, it just knocks on your door. Which it kind of literally happened like that. I had some friends come over and they decided to bring some other people that I didn't know. There was one guy that showed up and I knew of him because he was friends with my other friends. He was really cute and we hit it off right away. He asked me out on a date, but I kept saying no because I just didn't want to get into anything. But he really won me over with his personality and I ended up saying yes. And after our first date, I literally thought I was falling in love with him. Like, here I go again. This time I knew that if I got into a relationship with this guy, he had to marry me. So early on in the relationship, I told him that my intention was to marry him, and if his intention wasn't to marry me, then we needed to stop dating. He promised me up and down that he did want to marry me, so I stayed in the relationship. I knew that I wanted him to move in right away, which I know sounds crazy, but I was kind of desperate at this point. My goal in life was to have kids, and I just wasn't getting there. It took me about a week to convince him to move in, and he finally said yes. But he basically told me that he wanted to continue living his life the way he had been before. In other words, he wanted to continue hanging out with his friends whenever he wanted, and I said fine. I was just happy he was committing to something. Then I knew that I needed to get pregnant as soon as possible. My goal in life is to be a mom, and because I had so many failed relationships, I knew that I needed to make this one work. The first 2 months of living with my boyfriend were really good, but of course I quickly wanted to get pregnant. I also knew that the only way he would marry me was if I got pregnant, so I got to work. I stopped taking the pill and I didn't tell him, which I know sounds terrible, but here's the problem, I was not getting pregnant. I was off the pill for 3 weeks and nothing happened. I got so desperate, I went to the mall and got a pregnant woman to pee on a stick, which of course came out with a positive result. I went home that night and showed my boyfriend the stick and he was so surprised. He asked me if I was taking the pill, which I said yes, but he got really upset and told me that I probably got pregnant on purpose, which I denied. But then he said the magical words. He said, "I guess we have to get married now." I was so beyond happy, but the problem was that I really wasn't pregnant. So I started gaining weight like crazy. Anytime he left the house, I would eat tons of junk food. I would go late at night to the supermarket and buy tons of junk food. I get Doritos, chips, cookies, and cake and ice cream. I basically ate anything that was sugary. 2 months later, I had gained about 30 pounds, and it looked like I was really pregnant. But my relationship started to fall apart. My boyfriend was upset all the time, blaming me for having gotten pregnant. 6 months into my fake pregnancy, he decided to break up with me. I begged him, but he said he didn't want to be with me and that he needed to be free. That's when I dropped the whole charade and told him I wasn't pregnant. He literally blew up in my face. He actually grabbed a chair and threw it into the TV. He grabbed his stuff and ran away. Of course, he blocked me from everything so I couldn't contact him. 3 days later, 2 of my cars had been stolen from my driveway. And part of me knew that it was him. But a week after that, he actually reached out and asked me if I wanted to try at the relationship again. But here's the thing, he doesn't have much money, so he can't live the lifestyle I was giving him. I'm pretty sure he only wants to come back because of the money, but I kind of still love him. What should I do? Story time about how I stole a famous celebrity's boyfriend. Growing up, I loved the fashion industry and loved clothes. I knew I wanted to make that my job in the future. And just to let you guys know, I'm not the prettiest girl. I'm not anything special in terms of looks, but I'm pretty funny and I have a really great personality. When I was 16, I moved to New York to become a fashion stylist and I quickly started gaining traction. I became an intern at a really big fashion house and this helped me a lot. As you can imagine, I started meeting a lot of celebrities and just really important people doing this. Although I never really got to style style anybody. I was still in the room when they were there for fittings and different things. After a few years, I quit that internship and went into another company. This new company, I was getting paid more and I was just happier in general, and I was able to style a bunch of people on my own. I wasn't styling any celebrities or anything like that, but just basically people that worked in the industry and people that had different events to attend. But one day this celebrity comes in, and no, he's not an A-list or anything, but he's pretty famous. He came in with his girlfriend, who at the time was also famous. I basically had to style both of them for an event, and it was really fun. But here's the thing. Clearly, he thought I was really funny, and we were making jokes back and forth. The fitting took longer than usual because we had some pieces coming in, so we had to wait for them to come in for them to try it on. But she was clearly annoyed. Obviously, waiting around for clothes is not the most fun thing, but at the same time, we were giving them champagne, we ordered them amazing food, and she was literally getting her tushy kissed. I could tell that he was really embarrassed by her behavior. At one point, he even told her just to sit down and relax, which she did eventually. I left them alone for a few minutes before the clothes arrived. Once they arrived, I came in and I gave him the pieces. She literally ripped the dress out of my hand and went into the changing room. He looked at me and apologized and said, you know, she's just in a bad mood today. And I said, I totally understand. This was my job, so I knew I couldn't react any other way, but I wanted to slap her across the face. While she was changing, he started making small talk with me. I made a few jokes and it actually made him laugh, which I was really surprised. And then he even complimented me about what I was wearing. I mean, I did look really good. When she came out of the dressing room, she started complaining right away about the fit. It didn't surprise me whatsoever, but at the same time, I just really couldn't believe how she was acting. Then I realized that she was probably jealous because he was talking to me. He was like going out of his way to talk to me. They finally left and he said bye. But 2 days later, he comes back by himself. He wanted me to style him for an event coming up that weekend. And that's when I realized I needed to take advantage of the situation. I had the feeling he liked me, but I wasn't going to come out and say it. So I turned up the charm 1000%. We talked for about 2 hours. We even talked about each other's families and what our favorite foods were. So that's when I asked him if he wanted to have a quick dinner. Trust me, I was so nervous to ask him, but I knew I had to do it. And he said yes. We finally got to the restaurant and sat all the way in the back. I kind of got the feeling that he didn't want anyone to see us, but it made sense. That's when I asked about his famous girlfriend. Then he quickly apologized for her behavior and told me that she's never really like that, and I told him that I'm used to being treated that way by celebrities. And he said that I didn't deserve that kind of behavior from her. That's when I asked him if he was happy with her. I could tell the question caught him off guard because he didn't really know how to respond, and that's when he told me that he was happy with her, but he didn't know if the relationship would actually go anywhere. We proceeded to have a few drinks, and I could tell this was really loosening us up. Out of nowhere, I grabbed his hand and kind of massaged it, but he didn't pull it away. That just confirmed the fact that he liked me. Then he asked me for my phone number. We said goodnight and went our separate ways. But for the next week, he texted me every single day saying good morning. Of course, we would text pretty much all day long. I finally decided to tell him how I felt, which he obviously already knew, and he told me that he felt the same. Then he was the one that asked me out, and we actually went to the beach. We were at the beach for about 6 hours, and we had such a great time. At the end of the beach day, I kissed him and asked him if he really wanted to be with his girlfriend. He stayed quiet and didn't answer, but the following day he messaged me and told me that he broke up with her. Here's the bad news. We only dated for 3 weeks. On the 3rd week, he actually broke up with me and told me he was dating someone else. I saw it coming. He's now dating another celebrity. The relationship isn't public yet, but I have a feeling they're gonna announce it soon. I keep texting him and asking him to take me back. I was actually falling in love with him. What should I do, you guys?
My boyfriend wanted to take me and his 2 best pals on a trip to his mother's friend's property in Hawaii this summer. We'd been preparing for this vacation since the spring, and one of his male buddies eventually dropped out, leaving just the 3 of us. My partner and I have been dating since November, and our relationship is serious. We had, and still have, discussed moving in together, and he has stated, and I agree, that this is a long-term relationship in which we intended to stay. When his male buddy backed out of the trip abruptly in early June, his female friend phoned my boyfriend and informed him that now that it was just the 3 of us, she didn't feel comfortable with me attending because she didn't know me well and didn't want to be a third wheel. She stated that if I went, she would not accompany me on the vacation. They adjusted the plans and made it a trip for just the 2 of them, and they moved the destination to a beach in Costa Rica without notifying me. I was trying to figure out when to ask for time off this summer and hadn't heard anything about the Hawaii trip yet, so I asked my partner which week in August I should reserve for the vacation. vacation. He informed me that he had spoken with his friend and that she did not want to travel if I went, so he was going to accompany her to Costa Rica. He suggested we go back a week later, perhaps to Mexico City or somewhere else. I was upset and I attempted to explain how I felt to him, especially because this wasn't a case of being invited and then uninvited from a week-long tropical vacation with a girlfriend of his whom I'd never met before. As a form of reparation, we eventually decided to take a trip to Copenhagen, which we both wanted to see. I also requested to meet her so that I could feel more at ease on the journey. We spent the 4th of July in the city where she and her partner reside, and while it was lovely to put a person to a name, it turned out to be a very cold trip, and she was not at all welcoming to me. My partner commented on how unpleasant she was to both of us and expressed astonishment that she didn't act cordially towards me. I went out of my way to get to know her and her boyfriend. I'm quite outgoing and pleasant, so this should be easy. But even after several days, nothing clicked. They were also cool to each other. They squabbled a little about their future plans and his own 3-week trip without her, which was scheduled at the same time as theirs. This had been scheduled before ours had. This had been my attempt to make myself feel better about the trip, so I informed my partner that I still didn't feel at ease and that I was offended by the way it had been handled. I had attempted to smooth things over amongst us all, and I had requested that he come up with something that would make me feel better about the trip. When his family inquired about the trip, they were all surprised that he had planned it this way, and they told me that they would have been furious if they had been in my shoes, which sparked a fight in which I asked him to help me devise a strategy to make me feel better and more secure about them going together without me. He said he would never do something like this again, which doesn't seem like much of an offer given that this is a once-in-a-lifetime vacation to begin with. He offered to not go on the trip, but he had already paid for the tickets and made plans, and I didn't want to upset him and his closest buddy by interrupting their trip. He asked me for suggestions on how to make me feel better rather than just telling him what to do, and we stalled and stalled until the day of the trip arrived. I took the two of them to the airport after he bought me a bag of peanut butter cups. In this position, I feel completely ignored and insulted. I want to end our relationship, but I don't want to ruin something that has otherwise been wonderful. So, what should I do now? Maggie, my best friend, and I met during our freshman year in college. We moved in 2 years ago and are now housemates, until something like this happened. In 2015, my closest buddy went on a spring break to a different state and met a guy on Tinder. When she returned to university, she immediately told me about him and how wonderful he was, and how they had only gone out to dinner once, clearly a lie, but that they were constantly talking. I became excited and wanted to see a photograph. She had only ever shown me one photo of him. He's practically been her entire universe for the past 5 years. She never stops talking about him. Her nose is always buried in her phone. She becomes clingy when he takes too long to respond to texts, and she sobbed to me a few times because she's seen him around other girls on his social media. My roommate doesn't have social media. I had inquired several times as to why they had never met up again, and she stated that they were both too busy and unable to afford the trip. I even informed her that if he wanted to stay with us, we could save money. Every year on Valentine's Day, he sends flowers and gifts. They've been dating for quite some time. So my roommate went to work yesterday and picked up a shift. When our doorbell rings, I open it to find a man. When he says hello, do I respond with a puzzled hello? Then he reaches in and snatches me up in a hug. "I thought you were working," he begins. "I was expecting to see your roommate so I could surprise you when you returned." And I'm completely shocked. I instantly get down and step back, letting him know that I have no idea what he's talking about. My brain is unable to comprehend what is taking place. Then he asks, "Maggie?" with a puzzled expression, and I'm thinking to myself, no, that's my roommate. I'm even more perplexed because my roommate and I have nothing in common. Then something clicks, and I thought to myself, oh my God, is he the guy she's been dating? "So, are you Adam?" I ask, and he gives me a slow yes. I got excited and said, "I can't believe you've shown up. Oh my God, I bet Maggie is going to flip out." His demeanor shifts dramatically. He inquires as to what I am discussing. Maggie is my name. I tell him no, because I'm Maggie's roommate. I'm still lacking something that he's only thrown together at this time. He just exclaims, "Holy fuck." fuck?" and appears as if he's at a loss for words. He eventually asks if he may take a seat. I extend an invitation to him. He then goes on to say that he's been thinking he's been talking to me for the past 5 years. Every picture of Maggie he's ever seen has actually been of me. I'm utterly taken aback, and we first have no idea what to say to each other. So he pulls out his phone and shows me the evidence. He has a lot of images of me saved on his phone, and he gave me proof of her sending them to him in their texts. I was and continue to be sick to my stomach. I take out my phone and show him photos of her that are real. I suggest they talk when she gets off work, and he agrees, and he's irritated to the point of rage. I propose that we phone her first to let her know he's arrived. So I do that, and she becomes enraged. She's stating that she won't be returning home. She tells him to leave and that she will not communicate with him. He dials her number and begins yelling at her. She eventually returns home when everyone has calmed down. He's hurt and accusing. She's crying, and I'm uncomfortable sitting there. He screams at her, "No, I thought I was in love with your roommate," when she tells him she's still the same person he has feelings for, and this causes her to absolutely break down. So I suggest that he depart for the night so that everyone can have their own place. He agrees, and as he leaves, she becomes utterly insane and begins throwing spit around the living room. When she tells me she despises me, I burst out crying. It was a whole mess. I ended up calling Adam primarily because I was curious about the photographs she had provided. She sent pictures of me in my underwear and nudes that aren't me or Maggie, so we're guessing she found them on Google. He's in a poor mood and is having a hard time dealing with everything. I assured him that I didn't blame him for the underwear photos or anything. He ended up telling me that they had FaceTimed, but she would only show the top of her head or hair, which is dyed a similar color to mine, which I had never noticed before, but now I think it's weird. And her excuse was that she didn't want to look bad on video, was self-conscious, didn't have makeup on, and so on. He claimed that he didn't find it strange. I don't know. He also informed me that he had tried numerous times to organize meetings with her, but she always came up with excuses. Until this moment, he said he was mostly content to communicate by text or phone. He also stated that he will try to contact her one more time to talk about everything, but that he will be moving on. As for me, I'm not sure I'll be able to break my lease just yet, so I'm going to move out and in with a buddy till my lease is up. When I returned to my apartment, we spoke briefly, and she have apologized, but she remains nasty and defensive, so I'm going to give her some breathing room. I pity her, but I don't think our friendship will be able to survive this ordeal. Anyway, this has been a load of nonsense, and I'm sure I would be okay now.